Okay, so let's start off with a little bit of the basic motion for vibrato. Let me move my cello a little bit so that you have a better view of my arm. Okay, there you go. So this is about the height that I like to vibrato at. Technically, you can vibrato down here, but you don't really get as much of a range of motion for your finger to move. But it can work. I just prefer it up here. I think it's a lot more comfortable for me. But whatever is the most comfortable for you, that may be different for you. And something to keep in mind is that you are not moving the placement of your finger. I think Sarah mentioned this, but I'll just say it again because it's very important. You aren't moving the placement of your finger on the fingerboard like doing shifts, little tiny shifts. You're not doing that. So you're not doing... You're kind of getting the same sound as that, but that's not how you do it. It would be very inconsistent and all that. You are instead starting on the edge of your finger and rocking it up and back on the string, like that. So that you get about the same sound as if you were to move your finger, but it's also much more reliable because you're keeping your thumb and your finger really in the same spot, but you have this pivot point to form your arc at. So you get a sound kind of like this. And my fingers are flying off. Necessarily you would not want them to fly off that high, but I am fixing a bad habit, so don't judge. I am trying to fix that. But another important thing is what I said with the thumb on the back. You don't want to squeeze between your first finger and your thumb, because when you squeeze, your wrist may drop like this, and that you can't really move your hand if you're squeezing and your wrist is dropped. And the thing is, even if you're not squeezing but your wrist is dropped, you still can't really move much. So, but if you are squeezing and you're up here, you kind of get this sort of sound. And it sounds crunchy, and it's not very nice to you. So you want to just loosen up. Think about just gently tapping your fingers together. You can do that with each of your fingers. And that is how much pressure you want to put between the thumb and the first finger. Just a little tap. And just bring it a little bit more, though, so that you can press down on the string, but don't clamp your thumb. You can push your first finger down a little bit more, but I don't really like to use pressure as a word because it makes you think tension, but really you want to let gravity do its work here, and that I got that from Sarah, so props to her for that. But you want to let gravity do its work to push down the string so that you aren't tense whenever you do, and that way you can get a much nicer sound to your vibrato. Then once you are comfortable with this motion, which starts slow like that, you can start to speed it up, so. And my dog's gonna start howling. And then you can eventually, but do this slowly once you're like super comfortable with the others. Then you'll eventually get to. And you can vary your speed once you get comfortable with one speed. Eventually you'll start varying your speed and like the width of your vibrato, but you don't have to focus on that right now. I haven't even really gotten that far myself yet. But then once you can get, well, even whenever you are at the level where you're still going with a very slow vibrato, you can still apply it to a scale. But I like to do it, I like to do my vibrato on a scale whenever it's fast, but it's also super helpful just to get an idea of like where your fingers are moving and how to try to see the difference of where, because each finger, the vibrato is going to feel different on each finger because your thumb is really just going to stay in the same spot. So if your thumb is staying in the same spot, it's going to be more comfortable to play on first finger and second finger than it's going to be to play on third, and especially fourth. Fourth is the weak finger that no one likes to vibrato on at the start because it is just uncomfortable. But you have to learn it. You cannot ignore it, because if you ignore it, it'll come back to bite you in the back later. And I think that's about it. If I left anything out, please tell me, because I want to help as much as I can, and I want to be a teacher, so this is fun for me, and I think it's really cool. And nailed it. My dog did not start howling. He's just sleeping instead. I want to howl. Okay, I hope that helped.